The first episode of any TV series is the pilot episode, the episode that is meant to titillate the viewer into watching the series. Generally, the pilot wants to emphasize what exactly the series will be about and what viewers can expect. Pilots need to show off what makes them so unique, because you want the viewer to stick around and continue watching as many episodes the series will create. A manga is no different. We have our first episodes, which are our first chapters, that showcase the strong points of the series. In this series, I'm going to roam around the internet wasteland and surprise myself by reading the first chapter of a series to see if it can really grasp my soul to still read it. Who knows, if the series is good enough, I'll probably make more in-depth videos on it. This is how it'll work. We'll pick a series, read the first chapter, give it a look, and talk about its high points, then rate it on a scale. Our criteria for this unique series is going to be 3 different categories. The first one is not really worth going into because the premise is boring or an uncreative mire of what we've already seen. Essentially, dropped. The next category, the this is pretty interesting, but I'd rather catch up with my more popular series and put this on the backlog of the lists. This is probably the most accurate depiction of mid. And finally, for our third category, the holy shit, this slaps, I need to read this masterpiece right now. Ideally, we want the first manga chapter to land on the third option because, well, a manga has to do something to actually grab its audience, right? Now we've got our format, we've got our grading scale, so let's take a look at what we pulled out of the magic hat today to read. There's one thing we need to go over before I get into the meat and potatoes of Kagurabachi, and I think that's the power of memes, and also whether people want to watch something that's pretty generic. Now, let's talk about memes for a second. Memes make things go viral. That's just the truth. One of the reasons why you've probably clicked on this video is because you've heard about Kagurabachi, or you're probably some of the people who are making the memes. Kagurabachi gained an overnight popularity mainly because of its presentation. From what you may know is a guy in a black cloak with a sword, and he's posing. I think those poses are pretty cool too. You know, I believe in this one specific concept about anime as a whole. Look, if you have a cute looking girl, a really cool weapon, people will like it and people will watch it. We see a guy, teenager, with a cool looking sword. That's Little Boy Simulator, alright? People love that. I mean, that's why Kiritsugu's so cool. He's a guy, black trench coat, gun in his hand, smoking. Yeah, he's who we want to be. Chihiro is kind of the same, that and his deadpan eyes. I mean, the market is never really oversaturated with anime guys holding swords. I mean, to be fair, one of the big 3, Bleach, is a guy holding a big sword with cool abilities. I feel like this topic of oversaturation of the market is never really going to be a thing, because when you really think about it, I mean, how many isekais have we gotten? How many magical fantasy world, regardless of whether the market is saturated with cool looking anime guys with cool swords? It doesn't matter because people are going to watch it. People are still going to watch it. And I think if you have a good animation studio, first of all, let's at least go through the main story of the first chapter. So for the first chapter, we have our main character, Chihiro. Specifically for this first chapter, he's a boy, and then he kind of grows up into more of a teenager. He works as a blacksmith with his father, who is renowned for imbuing these special type of powers into the katanas that he makes. And from there, you basically just get to see typical slice of life. Hey dad, I want to make some swords, or I'm ready to teach you, and hey look, we have some cool fish. So it's pretty wholesome 100. I think insofar as that intro with a son and his father is pretty universal, I think people will kind of like it. I was like, alright, well I mean, it's nothing new, but I mean, it's pretty wholesome, so I'll dig it. Then in this first chapter, we actually talk about the importance of swords, and specifically how a blacksmith can make them, but also has to realize that people with ill intentions can also use your swords. I kind of liked that idea. I think it's dipping your toes into something more grand, possibly in the near future, about how the swords that his father will make probably have some special meaning. Your sword, you can make it with all the love you want, you can be a good person, but at the end of the day, if it falls into the wrong hands, it's bad news. We meet Chihiro's father's friend, who just gives us a bit of a lore dump where, oh yeah, did you know your dad was actually really popular, actually more important than the guys who were actually doing some of the fighting? And it's like, okay, well I guess we'll probably go into that more too. And then we get a time skip where our young little Chihiro grows up and he looks just so deadpan. just looks so bored. Like, I'm trying to imagine how this would play out in an anime. It's straight deliveries. He's not really funny. I'm sure there'll probably be a moment where he opens up a bit, but he's not even the silent protagonist. He says things, but they're not really filled with emotion until we get to the town. And then we realize that a Yakuza gang called the Korogumi have taken over. They're stringing up people, and Chihiro is extremely upset with how innocent people are being strung up and essentially being tortured or killed. I think we get to see more of Chihiro because he really needs to show more emotion. Or, I mean, like, I'm not asking for every single chapter, Luffy tier, I'm gonna be king of the pirates. We switch over from Chihiro to the actual gang and how they're interrogating this one guy who was kind of rebelling against them. And then we see the Magic Man. We see the wizard, or I think sorcerer. I think they use sorcerer, but I just like calling him the Magic Man. So the Magic Man comes in and he uses his wood style jutsu. I'm assuming it's wood. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just the fact that it's in black and white, or I can't see. But this wood style jutsu to like basically torture the fellow. And then this wizard kind of just uses his fire and disappears. And I think, hey, that's pretty alright. And it just really seems like this gang is just fodder for the sorcerers. Either they're just this town specific, or all across the neighboring towns it's the same Kurogumi. Then we get to the actual slaughter of this gang, where Chihiro basically enters into the den of the enemy with his two swords, and he unleashes the special cool power. I really like his powers. When Chihiro went in there and started slaughtering people, I think there's two particular shots that I really like. It's where Chihiro jumps on a table and spins around and slices some of the Yakuza members' throats. Very cool. The second one is when he jumps into the air and he does like this somersault, like spin slash. Really cool. I think this manga is really good at making finishing moves because every single panel he's in, every slash he takes, and every, I guess, special or ult he uses is drawn pretty good. I like it. I think it really adds more character. His fighting gives him character because he just looks like the Undertaker. He's just there for business. And you know, him being just there for business leaves little room for his actual emotion to show through, but clearly if these people have messed with him in the past, because I don't see his dad anywhere, then we're probably going to be a bit spiteful towards the Yakuza and probably anyone else who's associated with them. I think the one jaw-dropping panel that I really liked was when Chihiro actually summoned out the two fish. Now, I'm not too sure if they have any special abilities or if they're just there for show. You know, it looks cool, and I think it's fine. I think it did its job. You know, and on that note of how Chihiro basically does finishers, like every move he makes is a finisher. Not only are his actions finishers, but his dialogue is full of finishers. Literally, the last panel is, I have to cut them down. And I'm like, oh God, like he's just full of hatred, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm more than sure we're going to see more of him. You know, and on that topic of whether it'll actually hit its stride, too soon to actually gauge whether he will get an anime or not. It's been a constant pattern where things that are talked about online become very popular. There are countless shows that I remember. I think the one in particular, the Velma TV show, the week that it came out, everyone started dogging on it and they gave it hate viewers. Kagurabachi, I think so far, has not gotten any hate viewers, but rather they've gotten meme viewers. And with meme viewers, you don't really know if they're being serious or not, because at least with the other show, you know that people hate it. Just look at the comments, people hate it. But Kagurabachi, you don't know if the sarcasm's actually bleeding through or it's all legitimate. You know, when it comes to my criteria, whether this is a must recommend, a must drop, or a must hold on to, this manga isn't an immediate drop. No, I think that'd be really cruel. I think that'd be really harsh. But also, this isn't a recommend now. I think these 16 chapters could be spent somewhere else reading something a bit more better. Maybe Sakamoto days. I think this is probably gonna have to be on hold, because while the story didn't make me groan of anything that's already been repeated before or anything annoying, it's still there. It's not really getting me out of my seat and getting really excited for a future anime adaptation. But when it comes to Kagurabachi, I'm kind of left in confusion where I don't really know what's going to be the objective. I mean, he's very blatant about it. I just want to kill, and I don't really know what the aim is of the entire story at all. maybe it's going to be hunting down the sorcerers. So for this, I'm gonna have to go right down the middle. You're gonna have to hold off on it. Kagurabachi isn't going anywhere. There's no anime adaptation coming out soon. If you want to get in on the meme, then go ahead and watch it, and maybe you might like it. And that concludes my one chapter review. I think the next series we have to talk about, it's probably going to be Dan to Dan. I hope you all had a great day, and take care.